I never thought my sister's fiancé would touch me and do it with me. Never even in my dreams, but that day when she touched me, I couldn't resist it. It all started like this. I've always been close with my sister. Growing up, we shared everything, our secrets, our dreams, our favorite songs, and even our clothes. It was no surprise when she introduced me to her fiancé, Natalie. She seemed perfect for my sister, elegant and poised with a charming smile that lit up every room. But for some reason, every time I looked at her, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something different about her, something I couldn't quite place. I tried not to think about it. After all, Natalie was my sister's fiancé. She was off limits. But then, the family gathering happened. It was a Saturday night, and my sister had invited everyone over to celebrate their engagement. The house was filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and the buzz of excitement for the big day. My sister and Natalie were in the kitchen, putting together appetizers, while I wandered between the guests, trying to make small talk with distant relatives I hadn't seen in years. But then she walked into the living room. Natalie, her dark hair cascading in waves, her eyes sparkling with something I couldn't quite name. She smiled when she saw me, and I felt my stomach tighten. She had that effect on me, this quiet intensity that seemed to pull me in without her even trying. "Hey," she said, her voice warm but low, as if she was speaking only to me. "Do you want to help me bring these out?" I nodded, trying to play it cool. I followed her into the kitchen, where the sound of sizzling and chopping filled the air. We worked in silence for a few minutes, our hands brushing as we passed dishes back and forth. But then, it happened. She reached across the counter to grab a bowl of olives, and her arm grazed mine. I don't know why, but the touch felt different. It wasn't just casual, it was deliberate. Her fingers lingered a second longer than necessary, and the space between us seemed to shrink. I tried to ignore it, focusing on the task at hand, but the heat from her touch lingered on my skin. When I met her eyes, there was something in her gaze, something far more intimate than I expected. It sent a shiver down my spine. "You look stunning tonight," she said, breaking the silence between us. Her voice was soft, but there was an edge to it, something that felt dangerously close to confession. "Thanks," I said, trying to act normal. "You do, too." She smiled again, her lips curving in a way that made my heart race. Then, before I could say anything else, she turned away to grab the last dish. But I couldn't stop staring at the back of her neck, the way her skin seemed to glow under the soft light. The more I looked at her, the more I realized I was seeing her in a new light, and I didn't know what to do with that. By the time dinner was ready, I had convinced myself that it was nothing. It was just a touch, a brief moment of contact that meant nothing, or at least that's what I told myself. But every time I glanced her way, that electric feeling would return, like a pull I couldn't ignore. As we all gathered around the table, I found myself sitting next to Natalie. I tried to focus on my food to enjoy the conversation, but my attention kept drifting to her. Her laugh, the way her hand would brush against mine when she reached for a glass. I couldn't stop thinking about how those simple touches sent my heart into overdrive. After dinner, the group decided to move outside for a bonfire. The night air was cool, and the crackling of the fire created a soft rhythm that seemed to match the pounding of my heart. Everyone was chatting and laughing, but I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened in the kitchen. It felt like I was living in two worlds, the one where everything was normal and the one where the tension between Natalie and me simmered just below the surface. At one point, I found myself standing near the edge of the group, away from the noise and chatter. I didn't mean to, but my eyes found Natalie again. She was standing by the fire, talking to my sister, her back turned to me. Something about the way she moved, the way she carried herself, felt magnetic. It was as if she was calling to me, but I wasn't sure if I was supposed to respond. I took a deep breath, trying to shake the feeling. Just then, I felt a soft presence beside me. It was Natalie, her warmth radiating through the space between us. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, her voice quiet but inviting. I nodded, unable to speak. She stood close, too close. I could feel the heat of her body just inches from mine, and my pulse quickened. My sister's voice was distant, but all I could hear was the steady thrum of my heart. We stood in silence for a few moments, watching the fire as the flames danced in the night air. It was peaceful, and yet there was this tension building between us, something unspoken and electric. "You know," she said suddenly, breaking the silence, I've always admired you. You're different." In the best way, my heart skipped a beat. What did she mean by that? I glanced at her, but her eyes were fixed on the fire as if she hadn't just dropped a bombshell. "I admire you too," I replied, my voice shaky despite myself. I don't think I've ever told you that. She turned her head toward me then, her gaze locking with mine. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The world around us faded, leaving only the crackling of the fire and the steady beat of my heart. I saw something in her eyes, something I couldn't name, but I could feel it. It was almost like a promise. She took a step closer. The space between us was now almost non-existent. I could feel her breath on my skin, the warmth of her body just inches from mine. Her hand brushed against my arm. Light as a feather, but the touch left an imprint on my soul. I never thought this would be just the beginning, I whispered, my voice barely audible, but heavy with all the unspoken emotions swirling between us. The next few days passed in a blur, a mix of normalcy and undercurrents of something more. I tried to ignore the nagging feeling that had taken root inside me, but it was impossible. The moment Natalie had touched me, everything had shifted. The lingering warmth of her touch was like a spark in the darkness, one that refused to go out, no matter how hard I tried to suppress it. The night of the bonfire had left me restless, replaying her words in my mind over and over. I've always admired you. You're different. In the best way. I couldn't help but wonder if she knew exactly what she was doing, or if it had all been a slip of the tongue. But the way she had looked at me, those eyes, full of something deeper than just admiration, had been enough to make my heart race. The following evening, my sister and Natalie were out picking up a few things for the wedding, leaving me alone at the house. It wasn't long before Natalie texted me, asking if I was home. Her message was brief, but there was an undeniable urgency in it. I need to talk to you. Are you around? I stared at the screen for a moment, hesitation creeping in. What was she going to say? I knew the tension between us was building, but this was different. I told myself to ignore it, to play it cool. But before I could overthink it any further, another message came through. Please. I need to see you. With a deep breath, I quickly typed back, I'm here. When the doorbell rang a few minutes later, my heart skipped a beat. I opened the door, and there she was, standing on the other side, her eyes slightly wide as if she were uncertain about what she was doing. Hey, she said softly, her voice laced with something I couldn't quite place. Can we talk? I nodded, stepping aside to let her in. As she crossed the threshold, I noticed how close she was standing. There was an intensity in the air, something thick and almost palpable that made the space between us feel impossibly small. I led her to the living room, where we both sat down on the couch. For a few moments, neither of us spoke. The silence hung heavy, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was filled with unspoken words, emotions that neither of us seemed ready to acknowledge fully. I felt her presence beside me, her body just inches away, but it wasn't enough. It never was. Do you ever feel like you're drawn to someone you shouldn't be? She asked, breaking the silence. I turned to look at her, my breath catching in my throat. There it was again. Her honesty, the rawness in her voice. It was like she was opening up a door I wasn't sure I was ready to walk through. Why are you asking me that? I replied, trying to keep my voice steady, though it trembled at the edges. She looked at me then, her gaze soft yet intense. Because I feel like that, and I don't know what to do with it. I swallowed hard, my heart pounding in my chest. I had never heard her speak like this before, and the vulnerability in her words made something inside me ache. I wanted to say something, to reassure her that she wasn't alone in feeling this way, but the words got stuck in my throat. I don't know what I'm supposed to do either, I whispered. But it's hard to ignore. Her lips parted slightly, as if she were about to say something, but she hesitated. She reached forward, her hand brushing mine again, the contact sending a jolt of electricity through my body. This time, I didn't pull away. I couldn't. We sat there for a long moment, our fingers lightly intertwined. Neither of us said anything, but we didn't need to. The touch spoke louder than any words could have. Her presence beside me felt like something undeniable, something that had been there all along, just waiting for us to acknowledge it. Do you think we can ever be the same after this? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I turned to look at her, meeting her gaze head-on. There was a quiet desperation in her eyes, a longing I hadn't expected to see. It mirrored what I felt inside, but I couldn't let myself admit it. Not yet. I don't know, I answered honestly, my voice thick with emotion. But I can't stop thinking about you. And I think you feel it too, she nodded, her breath catching in her throat. I do. I can't stop thinking about you either. It's all I can think about. The words hung between us like a promise and a confession, something we both knew we couldn't deny. In that moment, I realized that everything had changed. What had begun as a simple touch, a fleeting moment of connection, had now become something much more complicated. Before I could speak again, she leaned in, her lips brushing against mine in the softest of kisses. The contact was gentle at first, almost hesitant, as if neither of us wanted to fully give in to what we were feeling. But then, as if the walls we had built up between us began to crumble, the kiss deepened. It wasn't just a kiss, it was an admission, a confession of all the things we'd been hiding from. When we finally pulled away, I was breathless, my mind racing with the implications of what had just happened. I could see the same realization reflected in her eyes, the understanding that there was no going back from this. What we had just shared couldn't be erased, no matter how much we might try. I never thought it would come to this, I said quietly, my voice shaky with emotion. But I can't pretend it didn't happen. Natalie didn't say anything at first, but she reached for my hand again, squeezing it gently. Neither can I, she replied, her voice filled with both relief and uncertainty. I never thought this would be just the beginning, but it was. The days that followed felt like a blur. Everything had shifted, but nothing had changed. We continued to act as though nothing had happened, pretending that the kiss, our kiss, hadn't left a mark on both of us. But the truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every time I saw Natalie, I felt the electric pull between us stronger than before. I tried to ignore it, to push it to the back of my mind, but it was always there, lurking, waiting to surface. It was a Friday evening when it finally happened. My sister had gone out with some friends for a bachelorette celebration, and Natalie and I were left alone at the house. I had hoped that being alone together would be the perfect opportunity to clear the air. We needed to talk. We needed to figure out what we were doing, because this was becoming too much to ignore. As soon as my sister left, I felt the weight of the silence settle in around us. I had made a plan to go upstairs, to put some distance between us, but before I could even take a step, I heard Natalie's voice from behind me. "Can we talk?" she asked, her tone soft but filled with something more, something I couldn't quite place. I turned around slowly, my breath caught in my chest. "Yeah, we need to." She walked over to the couch, sitting down carefully, her hands resting on her lap. I could see the nervous tension in her posture, the slight tremor in her fingers as she ran them over the fabric of her jeans. I joined her, sitting beside her but keeping a small distance. Part of me wanted to reach out and close that gap to pull her close, but I resisted. We had to talk first. "I don't know what I'm doing," she said quietly, looking at me with an intensity that made my heart race. "I never meant for this to happen. You're my fiancé's sister. I've never been in this situation before, and I don't know how to handle it." I nodded slowly, understanding her confusion. "I know," I said softly. "I feel the same way. I've never been this confused in my life." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our words hanging between us. The air was thick with tension, and I could feel the pull between us growing stronger. Every time our eyes met, it was as if something inside me shifted, something that I didn't know how to control. Finally, she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't stop thinking about you. I keep replaying that moment over and over in my mind. I know it's wrong, but I can't help it. I don't want to hurt anyone, least of all my fiancé. But the way you make me feel, I can't ignore it anymore." Her words hit me like a wave. It was exactly how I felt, exactly what I had been thinking every second since that kiss, but hearing her say it out loud made everything feel so much more real. I could see the struggle in her eyes, the guilt she was carrying, and it mirrored the turmoil inside me. "I don't know what to do either," I confessed. "I've been trying to ignore it, trying to pretend it's nothing. But it's not nothing. You're not nothing, and I think about you all the time, but I don't know if I'm ready to deal with the consequences." She reached for my hand then, her fingers trembling as they brushed against mine. It was a gentle touch, but the contact sent a wave of heat rushing through my body. I didn't pull away, I couldn't. "I know," she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm scared too, but I can't keep pretending that I don't feel this. I don't know how to make it go away, and I don't want it to go away." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I squeezed her hand, my own heart pounding in my chest. I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't ready to throw everything away for a love that could never be. But deep down, I knew that I didn't want to let her go. Not now. Not when I had just begun to understand how she made me feel. I don't want to hurt anyone either, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But I don't know if I can walk away from this. I don't know if I want to. Natalie's gaze softened, her fingers tightening around mine. I'm not asking you to choose right now. I need you to know that I'm here. Whatever happens, I don't want to lose you. I never thought it would be you, but it is. And I can't pretend anymore. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to calm the storm raging inside me. My mind was telling me this was wrong, that we shouldn't be doing this. But my heart was saying something else entirely. It was saying that maybe, just maybe, we could make this work. I don't know what this means, I whispered, my voice trembling, but I don't want to pretend either. I don't want to pretend this isn't real. Before I could say another word, she leaned in, her lips meeting mine in a kiss that was different from the last one. It was slow and gentle, filled with a tenderness that made my heart ache. I could feel her emotions, her hesitation, her uncertainty, but also the same longing I felt deep inside. When we finally pulled apart, we were both breathless. I rested my forehead against hers, the silence between us a quiet understanding. I don't know where this will lead, I said, my voice barely audible. But I know I can't walk away from you. Not after this, Natalie smiled softly, her eyes filled with both relief and uncertainty. Then let's not worry about what happens next. Let's just see where this takes us. The moment we shared was fragile, delicate. It was a moment suspended in time where the world outside didn't matter. But I knew the world would come crashing back in soon enough. And when it did, we would have to face the consequences of what we had done. For now, though, I allowed myself to feel something real, something I couldn't ignore any longer, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace with that. The days that followed our confessions were a whirlwind of emotions. We had crossed a line, and there was no going back. But neither of us knew exactly how to move forward. There was an undeniable pull between us, and every moment we spent together only deepened the connection. But the weight of the situation, the consequences that loomed just outside of our bubble, was never far from my mind. Every glance, every touch, felt like both a promise and a risk. It was a Wednesday evening when it finally happened. My sister had gone to bed early after a long day of wedding planning, leaving Natalie and me alone in the living room. The house was quiet, save for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic outside. We sat together on the couch, an awkward silence stretching between us. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it was loaded, filled with things we hadn't said out loud yet. I've been thinking, Natalie began, breaking the silence, her voice soft but serious. Maybe we should stop. Before it goes any further, I felt my chest tighten at her words. I knew this conversation was coming. The guilt, the fear. It had to be weighing on her too. But hearing her say it out loud felt like a punch to the gut. We can't just pretend it didn't happen, I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. I can't do that. I can't forget how I feel when I'm with you. And I don't think you can either. She turned to look at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of longing and uncertainty. I don't want to lose you. But I don't want to destroy everything either. I love my fiancé. I can't just throw that away. I never meant for any of this to happen. I didn't ask for any of this either, I said, my voice thick with emotion. But I can't deny what's between us. I can't keep pretending I don't feel it. I know it's wrong, I know it's complicated, but I can't ignore it anymore. Natalie's lips parted as if she were about to speak, but she paused. She looked away for a moment, running a hand through her hair, and I could see the inner turmoil written all over her face. This wasn't easy for either of us. We were both caught between two worlds, the one where everything made sense, and the one where we were risking everything for a love that felt as beautiful as it was forbidden. I don't want to hurt her, Natalie finally said, her voice low. I don't want to hurt your sister, but I don't want to hurt myself either. I can't keep pretending that I'm okay when I'm not. When I'm with you, everything feels right. But when I'm with her, everything feels wrong. The honesty in her words made something inside me ache. I understood her pain. I had been living with that same internal conflict for days now. I had always been the one who prided myself on doing the right thing, on keeping things in order, but now I felt like I was losing control of everything, and the more time I spent with Natalie, the harder it was to deny the depth of my feelings. We're in this together, I whispered, my hand brushing hers on the couch. I felt the warmth of her skin, the same warmth that had sparked something inside me from the moment we first touched. I don't know what happens next, but I don't want to walk away from you. Not now, not after everything we've shared." She looked down at our hands, her fingers lightly tracing the back of mine, sending a shiver through my body. "I want you. I've wanted you from the moment we met. But I also know the consequences. I know how much this could hurt. I could feel the conflict swirling between us, the tension in the air. But underneath it all, there was something stronger, something undeniable. Our connection, our desire, was something that neither of us could ignore. It was raw and real, and it had ignited a fire inside both of us that we didn't know how to put out. "Then we'll figure it out together," I said, my voice firm but tender. "We don't have to have all the answers right now. But I can't keep pretending like I don't want this. I can't keep pretending that you're not the one I'm thinking about, the one I need." The words were out before I could stop them, and the moment I spoke them, I knew it was the truth. I needed her, not just for the physical connection, but for the emotional intimacy, for the way she made me feel understood in a way no one else ever had. I needed her more than I was willing to admit, but the more I allowed myself to feel it, the harder it became to walk away. Natalie's gaze softened as she turned back to face me. She took a deep breath and smiled, a sad but genuine smile. "I don't know how we'll make this work, but I know that I don't want to lose you either." She leaned in then, her lips brushing mine in a kiss that was softer than before. It wasn't rushed or desperate. It was filled with the weight of everything we were feeling, the guilt, the longing, the desire, and the fear of what might come next. When we pulled away, I saw the same vulnerability in her eyes that I felt in myself. We were standing on the edge of something that could either pull us closer together or tear us apart. But for that moment, all I could think about was how she made me feel seen, whole, alive. "I can't promise that it will be easy," I said, my voice shaking just slightly, "but I can promise that I won't walk away." Not without a fight, Natalie's fingers gently brushed my cheek, her touch tender and loving. "I won't either," she whispered. It was a fragile promise, one that both of us knew was filled with uncertainty. But in that moment, it was enough. It had to be enough. For the first time since this all began, I didn't feel the weight of the world on my shoulders. I felt light, as though, for a fleeting second, everything had aligned perfectly. It wasn't perfect, not by any means, but it was real. And sometimes that was all we could ask for. For the first time, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to make this work. The days that followed felt like a slow unraveling, a constant tug-of-war between what we had done and the reality we could no longer ignore. We had crossed a line I had never thought I would ever cross, and yet, here I was, living in the aftermath of something that had changed everything. Every time I saw Natalie, every time our eyes met, I felt the weight of what we'd shared pressing down on me. It was intoxicating, yes, but it was also suffocating. I couldn't breathe without feeling the pull of her, and yet I couldn't bear to face the truth of our situation. My sister was home more often now, planning the wedding and filling the house with her excitement. She had no idea that behind her back, her fiancé and I were walking a dangerous line, a line that threatened to destroy everything we had once held dear. The guilt gnawed at me, but the desire for Natalie was like a fire burning through my chest, a fire I couldn't extinguish no matter how hard I tried. I could feel the shift between Natalie and me every time we were alone. There was no more pretending, no more small talk or casual touches. There was only a constant undercurrent of something forbidden, something we had no right to feel, but we did. We couldn't deny it. One evening, as I stood in the kitchen making tea, Natalie walked in. Her presence was like a magnet pulling me toward her. We had agreed to stay away from each other, to try to let things go back to normal. But that was impossible. How could I go back to the way things were when everything had changed? How could I act like I didn't want her, like I didn't crave her touch every moment I was near her? I didn't say anything at first, just turned to face her, the weight of the silence hanging between us. She looked at me with an intensity I hadn't seen before. There was no pretending anymore. No more lies. "I don't know what we're doing," she said quietly, her voice soft but filled with uncertainty. "I don't know if this is right. But I can't keep pretending that nothing happened between us. I can't keep pretending that I don't feel this connection." Her words hit me like a wave, and I felt myself drowning in them. I didn't know how to answer, because I didn't have an answer. I didn't know what we were doing either. But I couldn't deny that I felt it too, the pull, the need, the desire. I don't know what this is either, I said, my voice shaky. But I can't stop thinking about you. I can't stop wanting you. She took a step closer, her hand reaching out to gently touch my arm. Her touch sent a jolt of electricity through my body, and I could feel the tension rising between us once again. It was as if everything around us had faded away, and there was only the two of us standing on the precipice of something we couldn't walk away from. I don't know what happens now, Natalie said, her voice thick with emotion, but I can't lose you. Not after everything we've shared, I nodded, the lump in my throat growing. I don't want to lose you either. But I don't know what this means for us, for my sister, for everything. I don't know either, she whispered, her hand slowly trailing up to my cheek, her touch light and gentle. But I can't ignore what I feel anymore. And then, without another word, she kissed me. It was slow, deliberate, like a promise we couldn't take back. Her lips were soft against mine, and the moment felt both devastating and beautiful. It wasn't just a kiss, it was everything we had been fighting against, everything we had been denying. When we finally pulled away, I could feel the weight of our situation crashing down on me. This was real. This was no longer just a fleeting moment of weakness. We had crossed a line, and there was no going back. I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breath. "What are we now?" I whispered, my voice full of uncertainty. What had we become? Was this love? Was this lust? Or was it something darker, something that was doomed from the start? The question hung in the air, unanswered, as the reality of our situation settled in. I couldn't stop thinking about her, couldn't stop wanting her. But at what cost? The guilt, the temptation. It all felt like it was suffocating me, and I couldn't help but wonder, what were we now? What did this mean for us? For my sister, for everything we had built up until this point? What were we now? Have you ever crossed a forbidden line only to wonder where it would lead? Was it worth it? Share your thoughts or leave a comment if you've ever been caught in a situation like this.